Today on Starto.
This is how you do it.
Don't follow your passion. What?
Beware the attack of the zombie company.
Avoid the Series A cliff.
I'm Chris Franks.
And I'm Sandy Grayson.
Welcome to Starto.
Powered by Icosa.
Hi and welcome to Starto, the show for the worldwide entrepreneur. My name is Chris Franks. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Mobilify, alongside the talented, the beautiful, the lovely.
Keep it coming.
You kind of smell nice today, too.
I?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you got going on?
Hello, this is Sandy Grayson. What am I? I don't have a title.
Sure,
I'm an author. I'm the author of The Journalution and the creator of The Road to Fabulous.
That's right. You are all those things. And you also are the wearer of fabulous shoes. Can you pull your shoes up?
Can we get him? Can we get him? Can we get him?
Today?
Yes.
All right, so why are you wearing things that look more like they belong in the wilds of Antarctica?
No, this is called après-ski. Even though I didn't get to ski, I had to drive through a blizzard to get here from Boulder. It was really snowing.
Just the challenge that you have to go through, the agony to get here
all
to do
for
our
you.
show.
It was all for you, so I could sit next to you.
I think I speak for the entire world that watches our show and say, we appreciate it, Sandy Grayson. We appreciate you.
My effort. My
wearing
shoes.
your shoes. And braving the winter conditions to be here for Starto, the show for the worldwide entrepreneur.
Let me tell you about these shoes. You cannot wear these shoes in Florida, ever. So that's one of the best things about living in Colorado. Great shoe options. More shoe options, perhaps.
Right.
Nobody cares.
I seriously
Nobody
have nothing
cares.
to add to that. I wish I did. Sandy, tell us what, first of all, before we get started, tell the people that are listening on iTunes where they can find us.
Okay, yes. If you are listening to us on iTunes, if you're not listening to us on iTunes and you just found us randomly, we are on iTunes. Starto, powered by Icosa. You can find us on iTunes, which is very exciting. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, thank you very much for subscribing. We do appreciate it. And you can also watch the video of this podcast, get all the extra resources by going to icosa.co. That's icosa.co/Starto. We also have a Facebook page, Starto TV, and you can follow us on Twitter at Starto TV as well.
I'm just going to say maybe give us a little bit of love.
Yeah.
Maybe give us a little love, maybe give us a follow on Twitter as I fall out of my chair.
Tell people
maybe
you
like us on Facebook.
Okay.
Maybe watch a video or two.
Watch a video.
Yeah.
Because don't you want to see how cute we are?
How cute you are, Sandy.
Okay, listen. So last week's show was Valentine's Day. It was all about passion.
Yes.
Now, since that show, I stumbled across a very interesting article.
Tell me about it.
Okay, it was in the New York Times. It wasn't new. I don't even know how I ended up one of those, rabbit holes you fall into. But it was all about not following your passion, which I thought was really interesting. It's an opposing view from what we always hear. Every smart, successful entrepreneur that we interview, we ask them, what's the secret? And they say, follow your passion, right? Do what you love. This article was written by Cal Newport. He's an author of So Good They Can't Ignore You, Why Skills Trump Passion in the Quest for Work You Love. And he says that not only is follow your passion a cliche, that is flawed. He says pre-existing passions are rare.
It's a really good point.
Right?
It's a really good point.
And he says this has very little to do with how most people end up loving their work and that it can be dangerous. It can lead to anxiety and chronic job hopping, which I think maybe is what happened to me because I've had a lot of different jobs.
And I know, for example, the crew here, their passion is looking at internet porn. And there's no job in the world that you can look at internet porn all day.
Is that true, Blake and Tim? They're shaking their heads.
Just because it's your passion, how do you turn that into a career? If you follow your passion for internet porn, maybe you can become a pornographer.
Well, you and I, we talked about this before. Multi-passionate people, both of us, have a lot of different passions. I just found this really interesting. Cal says that every time our work becomes hard, we are pushed toward a crisis, which centers on this obnoxiously unanswerable question, is this what I'm really meant to be doing? Have you ever asked yourself that?
Like in the last 5 minutes?
Yeah.
or in my life?
I have had a lot of crises in my life that started with that question: is this really what I'm supposed to do? So what he says is that passion comes after you put in the hard work to become excellent at something valuable and not before. In other words, what you do for a living is much less important than how you do it. And Cal's advice to young people who constantly wonder if the grass might be greener on the other side of the occupational fence is: passion is not something you follow, it's something that will follow you as you put in the hard work to become valuable to the world.
Do you
Chris,
think there's a group
agree?
of people out there that are just passionate people?
Yes.
And that maybe it's not about what you do. Like, there are going to be people that get up in the morning and they enjoy what they do, but they're just not going to be passionate about it because they're not passionate people. We call those people non-Italians. I mean,
I don't know. I think that there are people that are born knowing what they're supposed to do. There are people that wake up, as kids, and they know they want to be a musician, right? Or they want to be an
Right.
actor, or they want to be a doctor. There are people that I do believe really, really know what it is that their passion is. But I think they're fewer than what we think.
well, and I think that the concept of, hey, I have to know what my passion is by the time I'm 18 years old, and that's what I'm going to do with my life, is just a falsehood. I
It's
mean,
a pressure,
I
a
think
lot of
that
pressure.
that people's passions evolve and change in their lives, and so if you follow my story in the startup world, I didn't have a passion for doing startups when I left. I left because I was miserable in my job. And the only way out that I saw was to find a way that I could work for myself, because basically I thought that the world was full of assholes, all of which happened to be my bosses.
Yeah.
So I quit and created my first company. Along the way, I found that this is what I will do for the rest of my life. I will start companies for the rest of my life.
Not hosting the podcast with me? That's not what you're going to do for the rest of your life?
That would be a really bad podcast when we're 80.
Yeah, I think we'll still have it.
Like,
We'll still have
Sandy,
it.
how are your shoes? They're fucking fantastic. Orthopedics. It's great.
No, but here's my thing. I had a job out of college where I made a lot of money selling, because that's what everybody told me I would be good at, and I hated it. I was miserable. And so my whole drive in writing a book was trying to figure out, what is my passion? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And I wrote a book, and I became a published author, which was a very, very long road. And then I was doing work I loved, but I wasn't making any money.
Oh, there
And
you go.
so I think there has to be like this balance of both. It's not all about passion, because you could be doing stuff you love, and if you can't pay the bills, that sucks too.
All right, so here is where I'm going to bring this back to the startup world. Here is my piece of wisdom that I can share.
Okay.
What
Lay
you
it on
do
me.
is less important than who you do it with. I mean, like, look
That sounds
at this.
kind of dirty. Wait, say that again.
That's a very good point. The people you surround yourself with in your company, if you're a startup person and you're hiring people, you raise money and you want people to come on board, you want people to work with you, make sure they're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Make sure they're awesome, incredible, kick-ass people. Because if they're not, you're going to be surrounded by douchebags. And that's not fun. Doing work, even if it's awesome work,
Yeah.
with douchebags is awful. It's an awful, draining experience.
I have worked with a few of those in my life.
Absolutely.
Well, so that's why this show today, not you,
Yeah,
Blake,
well, there's
not you guys.
That's right. You guys are all right.
We love you guys. So that's what we thought we were going to talk about today. Instead of just talking about your passion, let's talk about how you do it.
That's right.
That's what today's theme is. This is how you do it. So Chris and I went digging through this week's headlines in search of some gems and some insights, some truly valuable pieces of advice that you can apply in your business today. So Chris, what did you find?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about something that I've written blogs about in the past, but I found this article, and it's actually from about a year ago, and it's on Forbes. We'll post it on the website. But the title of the article is "How to Spot a Zombie Company," and zombie companies are really interesting.
What is
Because
that? Is it scary?
It can be
Is it bloody?
incredibly frightening. It can be incredibly bloody too, and it can suck out your brains.
Oh no.
So zombie companies, let's assume you started a company and you had these great intentions to start a company and that you were passionate about this concept and you started to get a little bit of traction. You didn't fail.
Mm-hmm.
You succeeded a little bit,
A little bit.
but you were not on the trajectory that you thought you were going to be on.
Because
You're
everybody
making
thinks they're
money.
going to be big successes that first year.
Exactly, that wild, crazy
Right.
optimism that
Google.
keeps people, exactly
Google is
right.
going to buy me. in 6 months.
It's the new American dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Google's going to buy me.
Yes.
But you're making money. Maybe you're making enough money to pay yourself a little bit of money, a little bit of a salary. Maybe you can hire somebody else. But your growth trajectory is not startup.
Okay.
It's not a high growth company. It's one of these slow, methodical, growing single percentages year over year. That's a zombie company.
Really?
And zombie companies, in my opinion, can be incredibly dangerous. So you've gained traction, your trajectory is flattening out, and you're in the grind. You are moving forward slowly as a zombie. Exactly. Turn and run. The question is, how do you get out of that? The first thing is that my thesis is that's an incredibly dangerous place to be. It's incredibly dangerous for you because you will lose your passion for it, you will lose your energy, and you're going to start to suck. Your company's going to start to suck, and you're going to start to be miserable because you're not going anywhere. You're not growing.
Well, here's my question, though. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
So the way you're describing it, when you're talking about there's methodical growth, there is some growth, it doesn't sound necessarily like a bad thing, because I know a lot of people come into startups with like this big dream, it's going to be a rocket ship or nothing. Is it a bad thing if you're experiencing just a little bit of growth? Like,
it's great for hot dog stands. It's great. It's great for hair salons. And it's not that those are bad businesses, but the very nature of startups is that it's a high growth enterprise.
And so if it's not growing, you got to change it.
You're not necessarily succeeding. Not everybody has built a startup. A lot of people have built small businesses, and they call it under this guise of startups. And hey, I want to talk about startups because it's cool and sexy. But in reality, they have a small business or a lifestyle business, and that's okay. People can make a lot of money in small and lifestyle businesses, and they can grow over time, and they can become generational. But a startup, by its very definition, has to have rapid growth.
Got it.
And so if you're not growing rapidly as a startup, you probably need to kill the zombie. And I'll talk about that in just a second.
Ooh.
All right, so what do you do if you're a zombie company? I've been there. A lot of my friends have been through this because we all bootstrapped our companies. And when you don't bootstrap your company, when you get investment dollars, your investors will tell you when it's time to pivot. They'll say you're not succeeding. But if you're bootstrapping your company, you have to make that decision yourself. So what do you do? Number one, get out and meet real people. Get out and talk to mentors. We talk about it every week, how important mentors are, but get out of the office. And the article that I liked was from 500 Startups, and it's a year ago as well. It says, don't drink your own Kool-Aid. If you believe that you're successful, if you believe your own Kool-Aid, but yet you're not gaining trajectory, question your own logic. Start to use scientific method to try to figure out your assumptions and whether or not your assumptions are correct or not. Number two, try something different. And we talk about this as the pivot all the time, but I'm a big believer that if something ain't working, fucking change it. If it's your office, if it's you move your office furniture around, if it's the fact that you have now been working in one corner of the room and you need to move it, if you have been leading with a particular feature of your product, lead with something different. Just change something today. Don't go another day doing the same thing. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results.
Switch it up.
That's right. And the final thing, my piece of advice, again, you can find the links to these articles that I reference here in the story at icosa.co. But this is probably the hardest thing to do because we as entrepreneurs never like to admit defeat.
Yeah.
Never like to admit failure. But when it's time to kill the fucker, kill it. Kill it. It's gotta
so
die.
It's
I know.
so sad.
And I referenced there's an article in Mashable that they actually reposted from December, I think, of this year, is how to close your business and when to close your business. And looking at those steps and looking when it's time to do it. But the number one thing that they say in there is when you wake up and you've lost the passion, when you've lost the drive, when you've lost that love and feeling like we talked about last week, it's time to, how do you kill zombies? Shotguns?
I don't know.
I think so. Is there like a special way to kill zombies?
No, stake in the heart is a vampire.
Heads, you got to blow their heads off.
You got to blow their heads off.
Right, right.
So that's what you have to do if you have a zombie business?
You got it.
Blow
You got
it
it.
up.
Exactly. And there's all kinds of great stories out there about how you do that and how you celebrate that amongst your entrepreneurial friends. But there is no shame in killing a business whose time it is to die.
Yeah.
It's you only live for a short period of time, and your time as an entrepreneur is the number one most valuable thing you have. If you're not working on your best idea right this moment, you're wasting your time. You're wasting everybody else's time too.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Fail fast. Go
Fail
work on your
fast.
best idea.
Go work on
right
your best
now.
idea. Sandy, what
Very
did you come
cool.
up with? That was my diatribe for the day.
That was good. No, I mean, that's the purpose of this podcast, is not only to entertain and inform, but hopefully to give our listeners something that they can apply. So if someone's out there and they're stuck in a zombie business, maybe you gave them exactly what they needed.
All we're doing is
blow it up.
giving Blake and Tim a master's degree in startupology from Professor Franks.
Professor Franks.
That's right.
Oh, Professor.
It's going to be worth something someday. Might
All
want
right.
to trademark that.
Yeah. Okay, so what I found that I wanted to share that I thought would be very helpful tip in how you do it is Danny Boyce is the co-founder and CTO of Speak, S-P-E-E-K, which is a conference calling technology. Didn't he, Danny Boyce, does that sound familiar? Did he direct Slumdog Millionaire?
The name sounds
He's
familiar. I'm
multi-passionate.
guessing
I
he's
think
not
that's
the same
Danny
guy.
Boyle.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. I thought that maybe we would do a production number now.
He's a multi-passionate entrepreneur. Anyway, Danny Boyce, founder of Speak, wrote a great article in Fast Company. I will give you a link to it on the blog at icosa.co/starto. And it was basically about how to Series A cliff-proof your startup.
Okay, tell me
Are
what
you familiar with this
I've
term?
heard it, but explain it.
Okay, I learned about it today because I read. I thought you would
can
know. I was going to
read.
test you.
You
You don't know
read.
Series A cliff-proof?
I've heard
Don't
the
read my notes.
terminology,
Don't
but,
cheat.
uh,
Okay.
uh,
All right. So apparently,
I totally don't know what that
Series
means.
A.
It's because it would require a Series A.
A
in the
Series
company.
A
Yeah.
is when you
I'm
raise
a bootstrapper,
money.
baby.
Okay, you're a bootstrapper. So Series A is when you raise a bunch of money. So the premise is that the first round of funding comes quick and easy, but the next round is a different story. It's not as easy to get more
Totally.
money once you've gone through it. And that there's a lot of people that want to give you funding in the first round, but the next time you go back, it's not so easy. So what he did and what he is doing is preparing for that inevitable place where they might have to go back for money and try to Series A cliff proof.
Okay.
I guess it's this cliff after you get a first round of
It's-
money and you're going to fall off the cliff
Well,
if you haven't started.
traditional wisdom says that when you go out and you get early stage funding, whether from an angel investor or a fund that's going to give you early stage capital, it's not that that's easy because it's still very, very difficult to raise capital, but the funnel, so to speak, gets a lot more difficult because you're not going out and looking for $500,000. Now, your average Series A somewhere between 1 and 6 or 7 million or so. And so getting somebody to write you a $6 million check is a lot harder than a $15,000 check.
That's true. I get that. I totally get that. Well, so Danny says here are some ways that you can proof your startup for this cliff. He says first, obviously having a product that doesn't suck.
That's actually, I think,
That's
great
kind of
advice.
important, right?
Yeah.
But he says not only that it doesn't suck, but that people will actually use and, very important, pay for is a pretty good way to stave off the Series A cliff blues. He says specifically, here's what they did. Number one, he's got 6 tips. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll just kind of go through. We validated the demand for our product during the conceptual stage. We leveraged this lean startup methodology to verify that people would actually use this conference calling technology he's created. And they did that before they even started the company or wrote any code. They went and they made sure there's a demand for this. Number 2, we found this market, this very specific market. They sent a survey out to some of the people that use their services on their first call. And then I thought this was really interesting. They segmented the responses into groups of 30. And then once 40% of one of those groups said that they would be very disappointed if Speak didn't exist, then is when they started to scale the user acquisition effort. So they just went after that market where 40% of the people were really into what they're doing. Several of his tips here talk about user experience. They spent a tremendous amount of time. He said this seems obvious, but a lot of times it gets missed. Spending time focused on the user experience. Before you're growing, make sure that the users are having a great experience with your product. They went over tons of data. He said we talked to our users. We didn't just get out of the building during validation, the early validation stages. He said users will not volunteer feedback. You must solicit it. You have to put on your bill collector hat and proactively solicit, i.e. stalk your users to do customer interviews, which I thought was great. You know, a lot of times you want people to give you feedback, but you really have to get out there and make sure that you're getting it. And then finally he said, you know, they started charging for the product. We focused on the power users, the people who would actually pay if nobody is willing to pay for it. Wait, hold on. I'm reading my notes wrong. We focused on power users who would actually pay us for our product and nothing else. So ultimately, it doesn't matter how cool your product is if nobody is willing to pay for it. By charging our users early, we entered into a covenant with them, which was pay us for our product, and we will continue to make sure that it is money well spent. I thought those were all really good ways as you're in that early stage developing. The main thing he says at the end here is that they worked hard, but that's not enough. They had what they believe is a great idea, but that's not enough either. By finding out who their users are and what they wanted, and by constantly paying attention to the data in a very sophisticated way to fine-tune the product and the user experience, they made sure that they would be a smart bet for investors well after that first gee whiz phase when everybody's all excited. So he said, do this, and you'll find that the Series A cliff is no longer a threat to your horizon. What do you think about that advice,
Well, I think
Chris?
it's very good advice. And what he is saying is make money. How do you get more investment? Make some money.
Yep.
Make some revenue.
And get some really raving fans, customers that will pay you right
Absolutely.
after that.
So here's the note to any potential entrepreneur out there who's listening and is thinking or early in their first company. Lean in close and listen. Follow lean methodology. Read the fucking book and follow it. And here's the thing is everybody in startups now talk about lean. They talk about using scientific method to validate your concept. Actually using real feedback from users and the hard feedback and hearing things you don't want to hear. That's brutally difficult.
Yeah.
The vast majority of entrepreneurs that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of them, don't use this, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. There's so much
Why
stuff
is
on lean
it? Is it
startups.
because they're just so in
Because
love
it's
with their
hard.
idea?
Exactly.
And
They're
like,
so married to this idea.
I don't want to hear bad, la 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 la.
Hey, you know what I just did? I quit my $110,000 a year job at a big company A. I cashed in my 401k. I put a second mortgage on my house, and my kids aren't going to private school anymore because I believe so passionately that I can succeed. To put yourself in the line like that and say, hey,
Tell me what's not working.
yeah, and tell me if I'm an idiot for doing this.
Yeah, criticize me. Nobody wants that.
It's very, very difficult. That's a very challenging thing to do. And so create a company, create a culture in a company where it's not only fail fast, it's try stuff, experiment, but do it in a 24-hour cycle. Figure out a way to either validate your idea or fail in a 24-hour cycle and be a scientist. Figure out a way to test a methodology and come to some sort of a conclusion, but by gosh, do it fast. And if you're thinking about that, go buy the Lean book, guys.
What's it called? What's the whole title? Do you know?
Lean Startup. The Lean Startup. Eric Ries.
The
is the guy
Lean
who did it.
Startup.
Yeah. It's an incredible, but it's not just now a book. It's not just the audio book. It's not just a video series. It's now an entire way of thinking about doing companies that all it simply does is apply logic to something that there was no logic before. So now it applies a little bit of method and process to starting a company. And it's freaking brilliant. And if you don't do it, you're going to, I'm not saying you're not going to be successful, but you're going to be in a lot more pain than if you weren't. The diatribe number 2.
Very good, Chris. You were on a roll. You were so passionate there. You were like spitting. You were like almost spitting at me. You were just like, the words were just rolling out of his mouth.
Maybe what we'll do is maybe we'll slow that down.
Ooh, yeah.
Slow motion.
Do you have one of those high def cameras you can like show
the spittle coming out of my mouth? So if you are listening to this on iTunes, we've now promised something that the crew cannot deliver on.
I think it would be fun to do
So
that.
yeah,
though.
go ahead and check
Or
us
want.
out
They
on
said
the
or
video,
want to do.
icosa.co, to not see me spit. Right on. It's all the time we have for this week's show.
Find us on Facebook at Starto TV and follow us on Twitter at Starto TV and check out our video blog at icosa.co/Starto.
Thanks for joining us, and join us again next week for another episode of Starto, the show for the worldwide entrepreneur.
go do great things.